As I said, I'm Vladimir Sapronov. I'm fine with name Vlad. You can talk to me afterwards because probably will not feed the whole talk into this session. You can follow me on Twitter. I find Twitter more fun than LinkedIn, so follow me on Twitter if you want to get any news about what I'm doing, what I'm busy with. So this all started with this from this tweet. It's from one famous community member of OpenAPI. I don't know, somebody painted over his name. His name is Kin Lane. For whatever reason, his name is painted over. And he said API first needs to be vague. I don't agree with this. Extremely don't agree with this. I think this type of approach is just making it some buzzword. So everybody talks about API first. Nobody knows what it means, like what it means in practice, how to implement it, what tools we can use, because it's vague. It's vague by intention. I don't agree with this, and I am a technologist, and I'm about to establish some tribal boundary right now. This is what I do usually when I see some tweet which I don't like on the internet. I just go to conference to speak about that. So what is API first? There are two pictures here. Number one and number two. Number one is a good scenario, yet rare to find. In number one scenario, human developer writes the service code, then from service code somehow magically generates the specification, and of course the client library. The number two is truly API first approach. The human developer writes the API specification. And from API specification, we can generate many things. We can generate most of service besides the business logic, and of course the whole client library still. I think adoption of the client library generation from open APIs is kind of wide already, so this presentation does not talk much about that. It's more about the server side of things. And this is what I define as an API first. When you write first API specification, then you generate more. Not other way around. Obviously, number one is not API first. We actually used to know this in the past. Sorry for bad quality of the picture. It's a screenshot from some old computer science book. In the technologies of the past, if you have been around end of 90s, 2000s, those technologies were used for connecting clients and servers. And we used to know that we can generate the server stubs, as you can see, and client stubs. Nobody was so excited to write them by hand. Present days. So in the present days, we have similar technologies by the Spirit, like gRPC, GraphQL. They actually provide you code generation on both sides, server and client. And that's very nice. Unfortunately, they are not good fit for all kinds of companies and organizations, mainly because they are not HTTP REST. Funny enough, they are happening over HTTP, but they are not so open as HTTP REST would be. And they are very invasive. To use them, you have to take specific framework, specific library. You have to use that specific things, and if they do not exist for your technology stack, you have nothing to do. That's a huge roadblock. OpenAPI. We need to talk about OpenAPI. First of all, disclaimer, there will be some criticism about OpenAPI. If it hurts you, I'm sorry. My goal is not to bash on OpenAPI. I'm just explaining my experience. If you haven't used OpenAPI for whatever reason yet, just try to use it, form your own opinion on your own experience. So OpenAPI is standard, extensive, and mature. I can argue that any of those advantages are actually might be downsides. So when they say standard, often they mean that the API specification is separate from its tooling. And they say, like, we are not responsible what's happening in the tooling. Like, we are only like under Linux Foundation or whatever organization they are. They say we're only responsible for designing the specification itself. It's fair enough. As an API designer, do you care about that? Probably if you want to use more code generation, especially on the server side, you want to have both the API specification format plus good quality tools. Doesn't matter where they're coming from. And yes, we can use excuses. We are different organizations. We are not responsible, blah, blah, blah. that doesn't help you as an API designer. Extensive. OpenAPI is, it's almost possible to implement pretty much any API in OpenAPI. It allows you to describe pretty much anything that could happen on HTTP REST-like service. That also means that it has features that shouldn't be ever used. Those features that you don't want to be used in your services, in your APIs. Arguably, I can name XML payloads. Probably if you're developing new service in 2022, you're not so excited to have XML payloads on them. Some other more complicated features like inline schemas. OpenAPI allows you to describe inline schemas, which is very hard translatable into generated code when it comes to code generation. So features of OpenAPI are specifically designed to make the code generation hard, I think. Mature. It went through 3 major versions. It means it has some luggage with it. Often people say mature nicely when they mean old, and this is true for OpenAPI. It's old. It relies also heavily on JSON schema, and JSON schema was also invented some long time ago. And for example, basic sample for that, the built-in type system of OpenAPI is actually after the JSON type system. In the modern understanding of APIs, of course, we are not limited by JSON API systems. We are not limited by JSON type system. We know how to express other types on JSON without trouble. So the needed types on the right side, this is what often used in APIs, most often. Of course, in OpenAPI, you can use format and escape through that, but you can read also in their documentation that format is not formalized. Like you can put there whatever text information you want, nobody cares. Of course, there are other options. If you haven't, I just randomly put some things that was on my mind when I was preparing slides. Smithy is actually from AWS, so I would watch it because they have power to push it through many companies. JSON API oversimplified things, but made the good code generation as a result. Fern just appeared recently. I just learned about them a few weeks ago. They have some good meetups in Seattle, Washington. API Builder, that's the closest to ideal in my mind from what I have seen so far. They are very mature. They have the same idea: simplify the specification, provide good quality generation tools, and they deliver something on that at least. My way. So what I do for companies that I work for, what I do recommend them usually. Of course, let's develop new specification with new code generation tools. And so now we have yet another. I call it SpecGen. You can check it on the SpecGen IO. It's not much. It's the first time I'm publicly speaking about that. I haven't done anything to popularize it more, like to spread information about it. But I'm using that in the multiple companies by now, and their API's code generation is dependent on that. And this is a classic situation which happens when you see some in my own specification format. Basically, when you set the goal to provide high-quality code generation tools, you realize this is a lot of work. There might be multiple reasons why you are in a situation when you have to provide your own code generation tools. For example, your company is using like some not so widely adopted technology stack, like Scala or maybe Kotlin, even though Kotlin is more widely adopted now, maybe Rust, maybe Go. So there might be lack of good quality tools for your specific technology stack. And then you're in a situation you are about to start developing them yourself. The problem with this is that it's a lot of effort. It's not easy. Developing the code generation is not easy. And then the specification format compared to that is just a teeny tiny fraction of the effort. And especially when we have samples of OpenAPI and different other specifications, you can actually borrow ideas from them. You are not doing research from scratch. You can just pick the best and throw out the features that you don't want to have in your specification. I will just run through some of the features of my specification. You can read the documentation at SpecGen IO. For example, my type system is much better. You can see I will highlight the arrays on the right side. You can see how easily you can declare array of something. You don't need to do this item type colon array, then item, type, whatever, but like 3 lines to declare the type in the open API or JSON schema more fairly. Nullability, I have nullability control. Open API JSON schema are not nullable are not null safe by default. By default, they say everything could be null, but then they have required field, all this like back and forth. I think it's just, it should be just redesigned on their side. I did it on my side. I will just skip these slides because they're showing the code. Again, you can see these samples on the SpecGen IO if you want. I can do too, yes. Reach out to me in Twitter, and you can message, my direct is open, you can message me in direct. Mention that you're coming from API Days. I can give you the slides and can give you even transcript of the script, of the talk.
We're at the time, but we'll just take another couple minutes to finish up.
Yep, so I'm skipping just the code samples, how nice my specification looks like. I want to highlight that my specification, my tools are living together. They are not separate. I'm not separating one to one organization and one to another one just to increase the friction of development. They actually physically live in the same repository even. How I guarantee that my code generation tools are high quality? I have the same set of tests for each technology stack, for each library that I provide code generation for. And I run the same set of tests automatically for each build, and I see what fails, what's not. So I can guarantee that if you use some small feature for a specific stack, if this stack is supported, this feature is supported the same way across all other frameworks, similar way. Currently, I support already like Java, Kotlin specifically generated into Kotlin, not through the Java. So it's like separate code generation, Java, Kotlin, Spring, Micronaut, frameworks, JSON, Moshi, libraries for JSON serialization, TypeScript, Express Server, Koa, JS, libraries for serialization, deserialization, Superstruct, IOTS, client library, Axios, of course, Fetch. In the Java world, I forgot to mention OK HTTP from Stripe. That's a very useful library. Also support Go, Scala, and a little bit of Ruby out of necessity. One of the company just asked, like, can we integrate the new services into the old monolith? And old monolith is Ruby on Rails, so I have a Ruby client generation. Again, this is just a snapshot, one small piece of my CI/CD system, which is checking that the code generation features in the par. They're actually testing the generated code, not the code generators themselves. It's like generating the server and checking that the server responds correctly. Yeah, I would like to conclude on this meme. Of course, the main point of this talk is the title of this talk. API first means that you have to generate things from your API. And maybe you're used to generating clients already. You also have to generate servers from your API specification. And this is it. I don't think we have time for Q&A.
Take questions if anyone's come up afterward, but we're out of time. So I apologize for the technical difficulties, but he did a trooper job and got us through that. So now we'll just break for lunch, and I think the next session in here is at 1:40.